There we go. Okay, now I got you. So Levon has joined us, and she's just going to tell us.
May 15th, 1935 in Perham, Minnesota.
Okay, and you're the third child in this family, right?
Exactly.
So what's your age difference between you and your siblings?
10 years between my brother and 11 years between my sister.
Okay.
So I am the tag-along.
And any fond memories of growing up? Like on White Earth Lake or in the store, things that you remember?
Oh goodness, my dad had me working in the store before I could look over the counter. And, and I really enjoyed it. I liked those times. And I can say that probably for most of my life, it was load up right after the Memorial Day tribute and go to White Earth Lake and stay there until Sunday night or early Monday morning.
All right. Now, how about Levon? Just tell us about your family.
You mean my children?
Your children, yes.
Okay. I'm going to be really kind of mixed up exactly on their ages, but I'll tell you that my late husband, or my first husband, Roger Groth, and I have 3 children, and first was our daughter Jane, and she's married to Mark Oakes, and Jane was born August 9th, 1957. And then her brother came along already. His name is Dick, and he lives here in Detroit Lakes, and he works for the Dairy Queen Corporation. And he was born November 3rd, 1958. And then in our family we had another latecomer, and that was Don, who was born December 12th, 1963. And he lives in Fargo. And I have 7 grandchildren, which is identical to what my mom and dad had. And by coincidence, it's the same genders too. It's 3 granddaughters and 4 grandsons.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so, and my husband Roger died in 1995.
Okay. And then what?
Oh, let's see, I went along for about 8 years, and in 2000 I met a man by the name of Jim Childs, and that has a funny little story, but we had almost 10 years together, and he just passed away on April 23rd, 2013. And he has 2 children. And so there was enough boys so that we could have 6 pallbearers for his funeral. And he too loved the water, loved the lake. He liked to, he had a place on, well, Jim and I together, we had a place on Juggler Lake, which is not too far off of 113, and going south about 7-8 miles. And everybody thought we were crazy, so, and we did too. We never spent the winter there. We went to South Padre Island. Again, we had water surrounding us. So all that water and White Earth Lake just made it really, just really something that I really enjoyed.
Good. Now, Lolly, tell us about your family too, because we missed that part in our interview.
Where do I start?
Your kids.
Oh, you
your
mean
kids.
our children.
Yes. Your
Okay.
children.
Whitey and I had 2 children. And Susan, he adopted Susan when she was 5 years old. So she always has the name Oberg, same as the other 2. And Susan is the oldest. And Susan is now 65. Steve, the second child, is 63. And Nancy, the baby, is 58. Nancy and Bruce, her husband, live in Lake Havasu City, Arizona. Steve and Gail, and Steve had 2 boys, Jason and Shane, and Steve and Gail live in Kauai, Hawaii, and who did I leave out? Oh, Susan. And Susan, after 28 years in Kauai, moved to the mainland. First she was in Lake Tahoe, and then she moved to Encinitas, where she now lives in a condo. And she lives about 5 minutes away from my house. So I see her at least once a week and talk to her on the phone every day.
Okay. Can either of you 2 remember any funny stories about growing up, being sisters?
Well, I remember when LaVon was just a baby, and Mom and Dad seemed to always be on the go somewhere. It was either VFW or Shrine or something, and because I was the oldest, I was the babysitter, and I'd say, Mom would say, well, now be sure LaVon goes to bed at such and such a time, and so when it was time, I'd say, well, LaVon, it's time for you to go to bed. Bill said, you don't have to go to bed yet, LaVon. And then we'd get into a big argument. And then when Mom and Dad would come home, then I'd say, well, now, I tried to get her to go to bed, but Bill said she didn't have to go to bed.
So, what's the difference in age between you 2?
11 years.
11. Oh, okay. So that's quite a bit.
Yes. And we really didn't get to be well acquainted until we became adults.
Yeah.
And because when LaVon was old enough to know what was going on, then I was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were apart for quite a few years. And then we got back together again. And I think it was when we started coming from California every summer to spend time at White Earth Lake. And then Raj and LaVon and the kids would come every weekend. And so we got reacquainted then.
What are some traits that you really admired in your parents?
Oh,
Is it just her?
No, just either one of
Oh.
you. Yeah,
well,
whatever.
I think one of the things was that they cared a lot.
Okay.
Our mother was definitely the domineering person.
Yes.
If Dad did not agree with her, he really had to sit back and think, because she was gonna call the shots. That's all there was to it. And that's how I remember it. It wasn't so much a give and take type thing. It was Grandma Alice domineered the whole situation.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the way it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Dad didn't want to.
Did you agree, Bill? Didn't Mother domineer everything?
Well, in some things, but
Yeah,
in
mostly.
others, no.
But Dad wasn't one for, getting into big issues, so he just let it ride.
In
So
handling,
what's not that important,
handling their money affairs, why Mother.
But he was very,
wasn't
not real strict, but right was right. And I think we knew pretty much that we had to toe the line, and I don't think any three of us ever got into any serious trouble. All the time we were growing up. For one thing, we didn't have the money to get in trouble. But we never went hungry, and we never lacked in the proper clothes to wear at church or any occasion. Mom was always there to make sure we were properly attired.
Yep.
And no, we never went hungry because there was always plenty of food.
Mm-hmm.
And during the Depression years, that was very important.
Any other things you can remember from White Earth Lake that stand out? The ritual on the weekends, was it pretty much the same every weekend? And
As a young child, I would say that I remember, like, when both Luella and Bill were gone, I can remember Mom saying, well, now this Sunday we're going to have chicken. Well, you know what? So many people would show up that we'd have chicken soup and dumplings. And it wasn't all relatives.
Oh.
Oh,
Okay.
So lots of visitors at the cabin.
Oh yes, we had.
Okay.
It was really Dad's. We called them Aunt and Uncle, Auntie Ray and Uncle Ernie, and they came almost every weekend from Fargo, and they didn't come until Saturday night, because probably Auntie Ray had to work on Saturday for at least a few hours, and
and
What did-
she worked
what
at
did
her
she do?
department
What'd
store
she
in
do? Oh.
Fargo.
Okay.
yeah, she was a buyer, or she ended up that way as a buyer for the infant and children's department, and so they were every weekend callers, and it was most interesting because this actually the lady Auntie Ray was our dad's first cousin, and so it was Dad's first cousin and her husband, and they had no children, and so they always accepted us as theirs. In fact, Auntie Ray would get a little bossy about, what she thought was right and what she thought Alice was doing wrong, So anyway, that's kind of interesting in itself.
Oh, and now I remember, I was trying to remember who the comedian was that Uncle Ernie reminded me of, and it was Red Skelton. Yeah. He'd make faces and make us laugh at the table, and we had got to be excused from the table because we were not supposed to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, he was a comedian
Oh,
in
yeah.
himself, because They also came to, when Luella and Bill were both gone, they came to our house like for Christmas, and we always had our children's Christmas program on Christmas Eve. And I was wondering what all the kids were laughing about, you know, like in my Sunday school class, and I turned around and there was Uncle Ernie wiggling his bow tie on his Adam's apple, and the kids thought it was just hilarious. So, you know, he was there, and then we had a bachelor uncle who also came to the lake.
Uncle Butch
Mm-hmm.
Tillman.
Yeah, and his name was John Tillman. And he came and he'd tell us right from wrong too. He had no children or was ever married or anything, but he told us what was right and what was wrong. So as I remember, like when Luella and Bill were around, that there were a lot of bosses. And anyway, he used to tell me that he could boss me because he was my godfather. And so, but he came out to the lake too all the time. Always brought his dog, and his dog's name was Tippy.
Oh, yeah.
And Tippy would carry his dog food, you know, the dog food meat style in the can, in his mouth, and set it on the back porch. But anyway, I remember that when I was a little kid, and maybe even as a grown-up. I mean, you know, he was still coming there all the time. Yeah, in fact, he would tease my 3 children till they were in tears.
Because you ended up bringing your kids up then
Sure.
lots of
Yeah.
times, right?
Yeah.
So they kind of grew up